our wonderful quilters and artists. And we're going to jump in quickly here. And these are the artists that were commissioned to do the quilts and artworks for the Sew Their Names project. And their pieces are upstairs. I hope, I trust you've had a chance to take a look. They're fabulous. Start with Mercedes. Mercedes. Okay. Mercedes Braxton and her husband, Reverend Braxton, spearhead the Mount Willing Church Ministry. They have an active congregation. They feed hundreds of people every month. You teach Sunday school. You're part of the Quilters. Mercedes grew up in Mount Willing. She was involved in public education for 25 years, beginning as an elementary school teacher for grades 2 through 6, then serving as supervisor for 2 primary schools. She and Reverend Braxton met in high school in Hayneville and married in 1979. They have 4 children and 3, oh, I made that mistake. I'm so sorry. 3 and 5 grandchildren. I knew the 5 grandchildren. Okay, first, Mercedes. In keeping with this whole project, I want to ask you about your name. It's beautiful and powerful. And what do you know about your full name?
Well, actually, my mom told me that she got my name from a student she met when she was in college. She was a first generational college student. And when you go off to school, you know, you meet a wide variety of students. So she met someone with my name and with the name that I have now, and she loved it. So she kept it, I guess, in her little journal or her little book. And when I was born, she named me after a student that she met in college. Now, my middle name is part of my dad's name. It's George, Geor, George. And so I was a daddy's girl, and that was part of my middle name. And when Dale and I went to Italy, we saw a painting in one of the places we stayed, and it had my name. It was named, it had the same name I did. So, yes.
Well, I was wondering, you're part of the Mount Willing Quilters, and you've really banded together and done the quilt that you've worked on. What did you think when this whole project first came up? When the idea of Sew Their Names, I'm just wondering how that felt for you.
You want the truth?
I do want the truth. I do. I really do.
I really did not want to be involved. And the reason why is because, you know, you've heard the saying, if you want to find someone who's going to do the work, find someone who's busy and they'll get it done. My plate was already running over, and I'm saying in my head, oh my goodness, this is another something that I have got to be responsible for. And I didn't want to do it. I did not start out as being an original quilter.
Well, your mom started the place, and that's...
She did, and she wanted me to stay while she quilted. I would bring her every day, every Thursday, and I would leave her because that would be my time to do what I wanted to do. Okay? I would have to pick her up, bring her, take her back home, make sure she was getting kind of fragile then, and make sure she would get in the house right and all that kind of stuff. And I just didn't want to have that time to be there with all of these seasoned ladies. I still thought I was a little not in that category. But something happened after my mom died. And it was like the spirit that she had for art and sewing and drawing. She was an artist. She taught art in high school. It jumped off in me. And quilting for me became therapy. It was my therapy to deal with watching a parent die. This was the second parent I had actually watched take the last breath. And that was very traumatic for me. So I use quilting as a form of mental therapy. That therapy be turned into a passion, and that passion be turned into a labor of love. And sometimes I can go into my room and I can turn my music on, and I can stay from 7 o'clock in the morning until 7 o'clock in the afternoon. I have a bathroom back there. I don't have to eat. As long as I'm sewing, I am enjoying it, and I feel that connection between me and my mom. And I love the scripture that says we are so surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. I don't know who's in that great cloud, but I envision my mom being in there, and I envision my dad being in there. And so I stay there and I commune. My children know not to call me. If they call me, oh, Mom, I hear the sewing machine, we'll talk to you later. I've even taught my oldest granddaughter how to quilt. She's a high school senior that will be graduating this year. And I feel so passionate about leaving the legacy with somebody else. It's not enough for me to know how to do it. I'm just in the middle part of beginning to learn how to quilt. I'm not at the end. I'm not ready to go to an intermediate level. I'm just at the middle part. But I don't want to take this knowledge with me and don't share it with somebody else. So I've taught a great niece, and I've taught my oldest granddaughter how to quilt. And those two things I'm very satisfied about. I asked my daughters, oh, Mom, we're not interested right now. That's fine. As long as I drop a seed and leave it somewhere else.
It makes me think too about this idea of quilts as monuments. I mean, they can be this very personal monument,
Yes,
but I think
yes.
even in a bigger way, all of us putting the pieces together is pretty much a major monument.
Yes. And something else I enjoy doing when we have a high school student who graduates from our church. I have two other sisters and we sew a lot. We usually make them a quilt to go off to college with. And my great niece, she says, she went to A&M at the beginning of the year. She says, do you have my quilt ready? Do you have it ready? Yes, it's ready.
I have a few pictures of your quilt here. Do you just want to tell us what were you thinking and how did you approach doing this when you first started?
I was approached and I was told that I had to do hand stitching. This was the first time I've actually done it on my hand. I like to use my sewing machine, but I had to do a lot of thinking. And I had to, I don't know what it was like being a slave. So I had to just imagine. I had to think about things that as a child that I went through. And the name that I came up with was Old Freedom, how people wanted to be free. And even though they may have not been free, they still had that in for their children. You know, I listened to Dale tell the story about his mom. I think all of the parents back in that era wanted better for their children, even if they could not see it. So these names, people who lived so long ago and worked so very hard and endured so many things that we can only imagine, they wanted better for their children. So if they couldn't get the freedom, they still long for freedom to come.
When I saw the "Oh Freedom" in the typeface that it is, it was very much like college. And we were talking earlier, and several people have said it, and it's kind of so welcoming, and it makes sense that you're making those for your kids and grandkids that are in college. I love that. That's great. And picking out this middle panel, what were you thinking on that?
A father has been working all day and he's happy to get home just to get a hug from his children.
Beautiful.
Never knowing whether he's going to be split from his family or not, or while he's here.
Thank you. Okay, up next, we have Winnie McQueen. Hi, Winnie. Winnie McQueen is a renowned quilter and fabric artist based in Macon, Georgia. She is a graduate of Howard University, yes, and has traveled and worked on projects in Africa. Her work focuses on hand-dyed materials and narrative quilts. As an artist, she tackles issues relating to race, class, society, and women. Her quilts have been shown at the Museum of African American Folk Art, the Taft Collection, the Bernice Steinbeck Baum Gallery, and so many others that are listed in your program. So check that out. Tell me the story of being approached to do So Their Names. What did you think about that whole project when it was brought to you?
I love that idea. I loved it. It was local, and I felt like whatever energy that went into it, it would grow and be very meaningful. We don't always have opportunities as Black people in the South. We're having to, so many people have to depend on philanthropy in region by region. So in the South, there's not a lot of money circulated for the arts. So it was a wonderful opportunity, and it was just a real gift. But it gave me a lot to think about, because I had made several quilts about slavery. My work is about history, current and past. So it was quite a task to place myself in 3 months' time into position to try to communicate through another medium, which was the work of other people. How do I take that work and do justice for their expression and for their purpose? So that was the challenge.
So let's take a
Okay.
look here.
Yeah.
I want to start with the outside, with the frame. When we were talking to Elijah earlier up in the gallery, he said, it reminds me of an archaeological dig and all of the things that are just emerging and all of the stories that each of those things tell. Can you just talk a little bit about some of the things in your frame and what you were thinking and how you did it?
Well, I was trying to tell the story of I was trying to tell the story of people whose names I was working with, and give people a sense of what their lives had been like. And almost all of those people had been enslaved, and I call them cotton slave. My family we were tobacco slaves. And coming south from North Carolina, from tobacco land, I had to learn about cotton. So I began, okay, thank you. I began by learning to grow cotton. And it's one of the most beautiful plants ever. And but it's also deadly to the touch. You can see the stickers on the cotton, and I have painted them with red to convey the idea of pain and blood. And in the slide that you showed previously, there was money, but the money was Confederate money.
I think we have, here's our
Yeah,
money.
and it was from Montgomery. I wanted to get Confederate money, as close to this area as possible. And so I wanted to convey the idea of the exchange of money and cash among well-to-do people who owned us as chattel slaves, and the idea that we never had a penny to our names, except in instances when a few masters would allow the people who they owned, us, to sell sweet potatoes if there was an abundance. Because we did, after all, not only have to work for our enslavers, but if we were going to eat, we also had to fish and hunt and have gardens and feed ourselves, because the cornmeal that we got on as rations were not adequate. So that's the spill on money.
Is there one more?
Mhm.
There's this one more here.
Oh,
Close up.
okay. that is a humble peanut shell. And it so happens that the peanuts come from West Africa. It's one of the produce items that came here and flourished because of us and our immense knowledge of the plant world. And sometimes I think that people believe that slavery was just so random, but in fact, slavery was very deliberate in terms of language, in terms of knowledge, and carpenters, people were brought here and placed at certain places or bought because they were carpenters, they were they grew vegetables, they knew how to grow rice and indigo. So that I wanted to convey in this quilt as well, about the people whose names only that we have.
So you're a fabric dyer, and you've also done this interesting photo process. And I want to talk about that and about somebody's calling my name.
Okay. The process that you see there is blue. It's showing a little bluer than what we call cyanotype blueprinting, but the scarf that I'm wearing is one of the products that involves a darkroom process, basically. But here I'm working with fabric and I'm working with negatives that I may create. I really enjoy working with leaves. And so this image that you see of the church is done with cyanotype blueprinting. And Somebody's Calling My Name is the name of the quilt. And I gave it that name because, well, while I was working, it was very stressful thinking about being responsible to each and every little block that had been so carefully embroidered. And I wanted to be honorable and I wanted to honor that person. And at some point, it was wrenching to do the work. And I kept thinking about, I mean, I was having to pound my fist on the table sometimes as I worked and tried to move pieces around, make them fit and think who should be here and there. And then I heard something in my mind's eye that said, somebody's calling my name. And, that just kept sounding away and away. And then I had to finally call the Braxton family and say, is there something about somebody calling my name? Because I remember as a child, you know, church has gotten very sophisticated now, so they don't think. And so they say, yeah. And so they actually began singing it for me. And I said, that's it. Somebody's, hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. And so that's how the quilt got to be called, somebody's calling my name. And then all these memories flowed in. And I thought about, as a student, in the 1960s, all bets were off the table. We had, for the first time, the leisure to think about our past. Our parents and our grandparents had worked themselves to the bone, trying to keep us safe, trying to let us become knowledgeable and learn things that they never had a chance to learn. And so it was very important to take a story and bring it to the public.
I think is there one more? Oh yeah, here's one more that you included. I love that you include all these different
They're documents.
documents
They kept the
and,
documents, and some I was able to leave in the form that they were written and filed in the courthouse, gifting people to their descendants. White people gifted like they would gift a horse or a mule. And so this particular one is not, it's actually the U.S., the federal government taking the I think it's 1860 census, showing the owner of enslaved people, but with no name whatsoever. And so we only know them or know our families by race, which is always B or Black. We know them as male or female, and we know approximate ages. So I wanted that to be a part of the documentation in the quilt. But there are lots of stories to be told. And I try to end on a upward note with decorating the border of the work with one of my painted quilt techniques that pull a lot of that work together. It was a wonderful, beautiful, aesthetic experience, but also very painful.
so when I spoke to you earlier, you said you've kind of continued working with this idea because you missed the quilt so much
I did.
when it went away.
I did.
Talk about that project.
I missed it, and I thought that it was such an important fact to be known and to be spread among people all over this country and all over the world, really. So I embarked on doing another quilt. It's about 12 by 12 feet. It contains the names of 100 enslaved people, some of whom were my own relatives, and one of whom was born probably in the early 1800s and lived until into the 1915. We found his death certificate, and it said the cause of death was plain worn out. And we thought we found that
Oh,
and didn't know that it was my great-great-grandfather. And Muriel and I, the librarian, we said, we were laughing. We said, I guess he was plain worn out. Living that long. And it said age 107. And so I went back later to look at a name that I had as of the great-great-grandfather, and lo and behold, it had been my own great-great-grandfather. So it hasn't made me want to go much further in exploring family history, but I still think that the naming process is important. And I remember that you said, well, I do have a name, and you're talking about my name has been erased, and it's true. We do have names. My name is Jessie Winifred McQueen. Jesse is Jewish or Hebrew. Winifred is Welsh, and it's a name for a woman who refused to marry and was therefore beheaded back maybe in the 15th century. And she became a martyr and a heroine for the people in that region. And a McQueen, is Scottish. So in the 1960s, we sort of laughed at each other about our slave names. I kept mine, and but it is important for our people to know how we have survived despite all that has been taken from us. We survived losing our families, our language, our family names. If, for example, we had been able to keep family names, last names, we would have been able to track our families back into Africa. But with the names being ripped from us, the language being ripped, we still, despite the loving names that we have, we are still afloat in a place where we know not where we came from, except from Africa, and that's because we have brown skins.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Charlie,
With me?
you're next. Yes, you are.
Oh,
I had the fortune of coming to your studio, and your studio, it's a world in and of itself. It's a museum, it's a classroom. You mentioned before that you teach kids. Now, I saw this in your studio. Was that written by a student, or
yeah, one of my students.
I was just going to read that as kind of your introduction. Is that okay?
That's fine.
It says, this was written by one of his students. Born in Pink Lily, Alabama, outside of Prattville, Charlie Lucas was the eldest out of 6 kids?
14.
14, I thought so, but yeah. Out of 14 kids, and was the descendant out of 6 generations of craftspeople. His grandfather was a blacksmith and taught him metalwork. From that knowledge, he made toys for other kids out of metal and decided to use that as a career because he enjoyed making others feel happy, seen, and important. In 1984, he fell off the back of a truck and was hurt for a few years. During his recovery, he found himself as an artist through recycling himself. He makes the coolest animals out of scrap metal. He calls his sculptures his toys and calls himself the Tin Man because he recycles the metal into people, masks, animals, and all kinds of cool stuff. And here's some of the cool stuff in Charlie's. So your quilt, talk to us about your quilt. Now this quilt, your grandma made this quilt?
My mom made
Your mom?
the backdrop. Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, keep it
The
close.
backdrop is in the back of it is my mom's quilt. This is a quilt that I laid on when I was a little bitty boy. And so my mom always told me, come in the house and help me. And, I'm from 7 brothers and 20-some cousins that was hanging around us all the time. So when I would come in, help my mom sew on the quilts, they would be people do the one of this, as soon as you come out, we're going to tear you up. So that part of me, it didn't frighten me, but it did make me angry. My mom said, sit there and get down by my feet and sew. Stop looking at her. So I went to sewing. I cut my eye around every now and then watch it. Boy, they just hit you. So she said, when you go out of here, don't go out mad. I had left out the room happy, but as soon as I clean that door, I was mad. I had to fight with 4 people when I got out there. I didn't win. I'm gonna tell you, I was a good fighter, but I was not a winning fighter. They know that I was there though. So all of that showed me the direction my mom was taking me. My mom punished me for 30 years. She said, until you put discipline in your life, you do not touch me. And that was hard for me. I was so upset with it. I left home when I was 13 years old. I've been on my own ever since I was 13 years old because I thought I was grown with 2 kids. So I thought I was grown. So I know that I had something, but I didn't know what to do with it. So she signed me up to my great grandfather, was Kane Jackson, was a blacksmith. And he had all these old raunchy friends that was snuff, skeeter, drunk, corn, whiskey. They did it. One guy was Mr. Avon Gray. He would make a chess set. It would take him months to make it. But he would put out in the neighborhood, he wanted to play the best chess player that was around. And so they would put out the words, oh, you can get you a good hit of corn whiskey and a piece of potato pie, because my grandmother would cook that. and said you would get to play Kane Jackson. And it was white and black come to play him. Sometimes he would beat him, sometimes he wouldn't. But Mr. Avon Gray, once he played them that game, after he finished the game, he would just rake all of them off the table for the kids to play with them. That's why I look at my work as toys. Because he said, I got a lot more time to make another set. So he would build a new set to beat whoever would come up to him to play that game with him. I loved him for that. Even when Grandpapa would tell me, he said, I'm going to learn you how to touch the iron and how to move it. It didn't take me one time to convince me that the iron do get hot when you stick it in the fire. One time. So I learned that, and that rhythm, that's what fascinated me so much, is when you're beating on the iron, you find the rhythm in it. And it disciplines you because it's telling you whatever you're doing, you're shaping it into something. You're constantly shaping it into something.
You have these metal pieces in here. Is that?
Those are metal pieces I put in that the top piece kind of look like a woman. That is the mother of all of these things that went on through slavery, through men that didn't have nothing. She said, we will build a foundation on your names. And that's what I was trying to do, build a foundation. Everything went back to the grandmother because the grandmother had the knowledge. She had the understanding. She had the way to cook food. She had a way to be real respectable to you. All this was coming from the grandmother. It wasn't coming from the man because the man had to go out and work all day long. The woman, everybody said, when they look at the caveman painting, no, they got that wrong. Who would be home more than the man was the woman. Who cleaned the animals? That was the woman. Who took the blood of the animals and the charcoal and painted on the inside the cave? The woman did that. Yes, the caveman got the recognition for it, but who was home to do all of that? Check your records. See, these are records they didn't want to put in no book because they think man should always be the top of everything. Man is only on the side of it. You is not at the top until you got a good partner on the side of you. That's when you become the top of your life because anything you know, you ask help.
So you have a lot of these, is it barbed wire or and why did you put those in?
The faces you see, those are the people that were screaming out to me, telling me to go ahead and do this. Make sure my name is spoken. Make sure my name is spoken. These were people screaming and hollering. Some of them had lost the whole family through this. And some of them was down in chain, and the mother was breaking the chain. And when you see the two houses up at the top, that's in the honor of me and my brother, because we made tree houses. So all of it was a building block for me to come up to something this close and touch these people's name. I touched their lives. I touched what they was to me. I touched what they had struggled for. I touched all of that through this. When you look at this, this is a time capsule that nobody know how to put the lid on it because there's so much got to be put in it. I know this.
So was it hard for you to make this quilt?
I had to cry over this. This took me down to crying. I don't really cry that much if my mom got a hold to me. But I had to cry over this because when I put the chains in there, I said, will this change something so deeply that's been bounded down? Will this woman break this chain? Yes, she broke the chain. She broke it by loving her children. She broke it by loving her neighbor. She broke it by doing something positive for these people that could come to her and say, oh, Aunt Lucy, can you work on my arm? Yes, I'll reset that arm and put it back together. We put some turpentine and kerosene on it and put a piece of fat meat on it, slap it on there and send you on back to work. That's what them people did for us. All of them was doctors and everything.
So you also built for this quilt a crate.
Now, these are the pieces that should have went with this other show.
So, and describe, so the quilt was going to live in this crate, right?
When you put this crate together right here, these pieces, it become a coffin for the quilt. The quilt will lie down inside of this, and then you would put it together, and you can chip it any way you want to. You don't have to build a crate for it because the crate is built in it. When you see this and you see the records in it, because when they was out in the field singing, I have did it too. They made records. They made music. They sung to each other to a point that when they add the jukeboxes and all of this stuff to it, these people was the one that wrote these stories about boogie woogie and all this stuff. They the one wrote that.
I love this because we do a lot of music in our radio programs. So I just thought
All
this was
this
great.
about these people that could sing and had beautiful minds, but they was hold down in a certain place, not in their heart, or not even in the way they think. They were just hold down on a plantation, but they still breathe through this. They still live through it. They still raise their children through it. Even with kids being sold off, they still went somewhere with that.
There's one, well, this is a close-up of the woman, right?
This is in honor of my great grandmother because it's called a do-rag. Because back in the day, black women was not allowed to show their hair. They had to put a rag on their head and tie it up. But the do-rag had rank in it. When you seen the knot in the front, that was the matriarch. That was that old grandmama would tell you, come here, boy, and she would put something on you. Then you send you home and you'd get it when you got home. And then when they went to putting it on the side, that was a lady maybe in her 60s. It could have been in her 40s or something. So when you put it in the back, you were just having a bad hair day. So all that gave me something. These are slaves that is working in the field. And so for the blacks to work in there, the whites had to be there too to watch them. So that's why you see black, red, all of that is in that piece. And this is made from an old basket. So this is weaved together. All this has been weaved together. All have been weaved together. Look at this. This is when the black, the red, orange, whatever color you want to call a person, this is when they all had to come and get the hoes and chop in the field, pulling the corn and doing all of the hard work. These was the people that did that.
Mm.
And they stayed together with each other. If one had food, the other one had it too.
Thank you, Charlie.
You're more
Good
than welcome.
stories, good work. Well, Yvonne, one more year.
You was on the line, girl.
Yvonne. Okay, let me get my. Yvonne Wells is an artist who talks through her quilts. She grew up in Tuscaloosa in the area where she still lives and works today. She graduated from Stillman College and received her master's at Alabama State. Her work has been shown at Williams College, the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and the American Museum of Folk Art. It is in the permanent collections of the International Quilt Museum and so many other things you can read in your program. Ms. Wells is an artist who makes narrative story quilts. She has created hundreds of quilts, quilts on religious subjects, the crucifixion, the coming of the Magi, the 7 deadly sins, quilts on socio-political themes, including the civil rights movement. She has a category called Children's Moment and one called Potluck or Picture This, featuring baseball and famous Americans and musicians. She's recently published the most beautiful and evocative quilt book with Dr. Stacy Morgan from the University of Alabama.
Yvonne.
Good evening.
Good evening. And when I came to your house, the first thing, when I walked in the door, you had a pile of fabric on the floor and you told me you work on the floor and you said, I see 3 quilts in here. So you see the quilts with the fabric that you have. And tell us about that. And where do you get the fabric? And
Well, on that picture there fits 3.
Mhm.
I get fabrics from any place. I pick it up off the ground. I do garage sales, and I have people bring scraps to my house and leave it on my porch. It does not matter. However, I do buy a lot of fabric. I don't use anything that I pick up. But I'm always working on either 2 or 3 quilts, sometimes more. And I do work on the floor because I want to be in charge of my work. And if it's higher than I am, or on the same level as I am, I think I'm being defeated, and I want to be in charge of what I do. And that is what I do. Okay. I started quilting in 1979 out of a need to do something. So I was making those pieces just like these ladies and gentlemen were doing, but I didn't like the feel of it. So when I was told, or they came to me about their names, I said, you must have come to the wrong address because I can't do that. I don't like piecing. I'm a person who does applique, and that's how I work. And I didn't think I fit in the same narratives as these did, but I said, well, let me think about it. And I did, and I said I would go ahead and do it because I know the importance of a name. My grandson here is named Mahias Wells. How important that last name is, because once you have a name, you have an identity, and nobody can take that away from you. So, as you said, I work in several categories. No category is better than the other. But when they said, we want you to do this, a part of this quilt, I said, okay, I'll do it. It was so painful to make. And I think each of us have said something of that kind. It was tough to make that quilt because it brought back all memories that I had been told about slavery and had experienced seeing people pass me going to the field to pick cotton or to do whatever it was. But I said, just let me try. And if I complete this quilt, I will show it to the world so that they can understand some of the things that they have read about. So I did. But mine didn't have but one name on it. And that name was Boy, because the slaves were called different names, the boy, gal, pickaninny, and all of that kind of stuff. So I made the quilt, but I did it on the religious side. I brought in the preacher, the big good preacher. And what he did was, he was wrong. He separated the black from the white. The black had to go in that back door. I got him walking up the steps of the church, and they had to sit on the floor there, as opposed to the white being brought in by a black man with the people sitting in the wagon. So they didn't have to walk.
So I think we have this picture here
Oh,
of
is
the,
it there?
of the,
Oh, yes,
wagon.
this is the black. This is where they're going up to the church and we'll be sitting on the floor there. And on this side here, where you see the buttons all nice and neat, this is the white side, very nice and neat. Here on the brown side or the black side, you will find the buttons that are much bigger and all out of order. And then there were snaps in there. Someone had grown some berries or something. And so when the black people walked across there, they got stuck. Wasn't that ugly? But that's the way it was at that time. But
and so with this wagon too, the wheel falls off. You can,
yes, the wheel fell off when he was carrying the people to church. So the big man and he had a stick up there. I don't know if you can see it or not.
Oops.
But he said to the guy pulling the wagon, boy, pull this blank, blank, blank wagon. I just put the dots in. I don't curse, but I know what they may have said. They may not have said any of this, but my imagination is wild.
Yes.
And I can fix it like I want to.
Yes.
Not to hurt anybody, but to satisfy me. Okay.
there's a next one.
Okay, the name of this quilt, since we can't see it all, is Worship Us at Mount Willie. That was given to
Here's the whole quilt right here. So
oh, I need to stand up.
Yeah, why
I
did,
taught physical education and I did all kinds of stuff. Yeah, this is called Worshipers at Mount Willing. You see the man at the top there? Got his hands all out and wide. On this side, you see the black people going in church. On this side, you see the white being brought in. You see that hand here? You see this man? He's doing his finger like this on the black side. He's a hypocrite, but he's the preacher. All right. On the left, on his right-hand side, he has his hand out and he has a Bible in it. He's a hypocrite. So he always thought the people on the right-hand side were the ones who would get to heaven, and the ones on the left-hand side would go to hell. He got the devil there. Up above that, you will see that during that time, or just before that time, you see a Klansman
we have,
behind the tree. They were waiting after church just in case to capture a black person and maybe hang him. I only had this one name on this quilt, which it says boy. Others that are down here on the flag are the Mount Willing quilters who put their name on it. Birds are always in my quilt, 3. God the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. But you notice that there are 3 birds, 2 in the white, they're in the front, aren't they? 1 black in the back. That's just the way it was at that time. On this quilt is the American flag, because this, what I made, was happening here in the United States. I hope I got it in. I told you, when I go out and speak, people will say, now, Yvonne, you always talking about religion. I said, if you don't want me to say anything in your class, don't invite me, because I will talk about it.
so the trees and is that the,
These are the trees in Mount Willing. There are many, 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 many trees. So this was my way of showing that. And the yellow moon, it was a yellow sun, it was a bright day. And that's why I put it there. There's a toilet here. It's not down here, but there's a toilet with the moon cut out of it. Are you aware of that? Yeah, that's what's for the white. And over here, the black, they had to stand behind a tree. Or just hope nobody would see them. This was a painful piece.
this is the,
This was a painful piece to make, but it says so much, and it will be a lesson to either show or to kids to tell after I have told it to them.
so you were a PE teacher for most of your adult life, and then you switched to quilting out of the blue. What possessed you?
I taught school for 35 years as a physical education teacher. And I participated as long as I could, because when I started to teaching, I told my students, if you can outdo me in anything, I will retire. So they got to the point that they did, and I retired.
That's good. But you told me a story about starting, you were working in a segregated school, and then at the time of integration, what happened?
Yes, that was 1970, 69, 70, and 71. I was told that I would like for you to go teach across town. I said to myself, there's only one school across town, that's all white. And the superintendent said to the principal, Yvonne, you need to go and teach at the school across town. I said, no, sir, I'm not going. I was very polite. I said, no, I'm not going. He said, they're calling you. I said, why are they calling me? I'm just a regular old teacher, so they say. So after having a discussion with the principal, I finally decided that I better go. It wasn't easy at that time. I got a chance to see lots of fights, blood fights with bricks and anything that would come up. They would come to my area and fight because I was in the gym. There's lots of space, so I'm assuming. So I'm in there trying to break them up. So I stopped doing that because somebody hit me on the arm. Said, y'all can do whatever you want to. But it was not easy at that time. And after some years, it calmed down and it calmed down and it calmed down. So I made it through, and they asked me to move to the elementary school. I said, I don't know what to do with a 6, 7, and 8-year-old child. I stayed there 2 years, and then I went to the middle school. I stayed there 4 years. After 4 years, I retired. But it was all good. I was a person who was good to students. I told them a lot of things because my kids were very poor. They had nothing. So I was kind of a welfare mama teacher and helped anybody out. So I enjoyed that part, but it was time for me to go when they could do more than I could.
And you and all of your family went to Stillman College?
It was 9 of us in the family, and all of us went to Stillman with the exception of one who was burned up at 16. Yeah, mother taught school. My father went to Stillman. He was a minister. So we are kind of the kind that pushes for education. Because if you are educated, you can get a lot of what you want. I can't say everything, but a lot of what you want.
Thank you. I wanted to say something at the end, which just left my machine here. But did you want to tell me?
Well, I was describing the new quilt and lost my train of thought. And I want to hold your hand up after 2 minutes if I haven't stopped talking and stop me. But the new quilt is it's the quilt of names, 100 names, 12 by 12 feet, surrounded by shells that symbolize the return to Africa. People thought if they held on to those shells, that would bring the luck of the return to Africa. And so there are names of all kinds that I mentioned. And in this particular quilt, without the input of Mount Willing, I had to come up with an idea for this quilt. And so this quilt is surrounded, in fact, it is made of like a flower bed, but it's my hand dyed yo-yos that cover the whole quilt. But there's a border, and around the border, you will see bright turquoise quilted work that contains figures. And the only bright red symbols there are that of a tiny human figure that has jumped overboard the slave ship, because the person we had to be transported from Africa to here, and it was probably one of the most bloody eras in human history. And they say that the sharks followed those ships from Africa all the way to America because there was so much blood spill. So this tiny figure is shown as red because it's now being eaten by sharks. And alongside that human woman figure, there's an even tinier figure, and that is the child that she was holding when she jumped overboard, who she does not know will live. She doesn't know how it will live, because the rumors in Africa were that white people were coming to Africa to get people to take them somewhere and eat them, because they were sure, I think that because of the color of their skin, that they needed some food. So that was the rumor. And I know that we hear a lot of stories about how people were captured, but I'm somehow sure that someone, whoever was captured, was a part of the group that followed the bright red velveteen scraps to the ship and promised more of that red velvet fabric that's very, very scarce in Africa. And when we got on board, the gates closed, and that's how we got to America. I think that's how, because there's so much anger in my family about the color red. I'll stop talking.
But you had one more thing to say about your new quilt, where you displayed it.
Tell
that
the quilt has been displayed locally in the biggest, wealthiest white cemetery in Macon, Georgia, that's called Rose Hill. The black cemetery is called Oak Ridge, and it's a place where enslavers, people who owned slaves, needed a place to bury their property. And so there has been created a huge space there, but there evidently someone cleaned up or got rid of the rocks and the whatever objects were left there to denote that a person lies there. So when we had our exhibit, the place was like a pasture. And so we took my quilt, which was designed to lay on the floor and replicate an African burial site, and we put it in the middle of the cemetery, and so that we could say thank you to those people whose names we do not know, but we wanted to thank them for their contributions to American wealth. And we need to remember that not only did white people live well, but today all of us in America, in many parts of the world, live well because of their labor, even though we may not know who they are.
Do we have any? Okay. Reverend Braxton.
Somebody. Somebody's calling my name. Hush. Somebody's calling my name. Oh, oh my Lord. Hush. Somebody's calling my name. Hush. Somebody's calling my name. Hush. Hush. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my